Hey everybody, welcome back to Omens. I'm your host, Ryan, AM Air Pronouns, and it is November. I have to apologize about last month. I was planning to do a 5th week special video, and it didn't happen. First off, when my usual recording day, I still didn't have any idea what the heck I wanted to do. And then the rest of October got very, very busy with my mom coming down to visit, a bunch of other stuff, and long story short, I couldn't actually do the research I wanted to do or find the time to actually record. So, sorry about that. But anyway, fresh new month, right? It's November, and it's episode 45, I believe. Yeah, 45. And we're diving into the Two of Swords, so let's get into it. And so first up, we have my Archeon Tarot representing our numerology section, so number 2, obviously. On this card, there's a bit of ripping at the top. Don't mind that. It was... I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this before when I brought this deck out, is like right after I first got it, my sister's rabbit peed all over it, which was very irritating. But when I was thinking about getting a replacement deck for it, I got it's fine. It'll work. I mean, it's just cardboard, and only a few of the cards were actually had spots come off on them. And funnily enough, with the ripping, it actually kind of goes with the artwork of the Archeon, because it's all a little faded and ripped looking. So anyway, on this card, we have a feminine-looking person with long hair, kind of in the background of the card. Well, not the background, but there's like 3 layers, so she's kind of in the middle layer. And she's kind of like got her arms crossed over her chest, and she's kind of turned like half away, like she's in defensive, don't touch me, don't come near me mode. They're unsure and a little scared. And in the very foreground, in front of her, we've got 2 crossed swords. So they're like, the swords are like guarding this woman or this person. So that's the image on the card, and the number 2 is, as we've discussed before, our first spiritual / feeling / emotional / soul number. So it's the first number we come to, which is about the soul, the heart, the emotions, our next experience in our growth. So we've gone from 1, which is the purely physical, which is all about I hurt, I'm gonna scream, I'm tired, I'm gonna scream, to I'm sad, I'm bored, I'm gonna do something about it, I'm gonna scream. It's like when we actually start experiencing emotions. When we start finding not only that we need, but not only do we need care, but we need that caretaker. Start recognizing the other people outside of us. This is where the duality of nature comes in, where we've hit the point where we're like, oh, it's no longer self. There is more than self. And we need that other than self to help care for us. Duality of nature. Now, obviously, I'm pretty sure I probably mentioned it here before, but I'm not there are only 2 of everything, and they're opposites, and they oppose and complement, and yes and no. So, yes, there are oppositions of everything, so I'll just break it down. First thing that comes to mind, especially me, and I'm sure a few other people, gender. So we've got male, female. That is a duality. They're both polarities, opposition. They oppose each other. How do I put this? So it's a bit of a construct, obviously, but also a lot of the experiences of the man experiences are different and opposing, and also polarizing to the, quote, woman experiences, unquote. So we've got these 2 opposite ends that both complement and oppose each other. There's all kinds of things about the differences between men and women, and all that loveliness, and how there's like some things that they're like, wait, you really think that way? And then they're like, yeah, you don't? That is an opposition, a duality. There's two different that go back and forth. Now, obviously, there are others outside of that because we have an entire gender spectrum. So we've got male, female. The next sort of polarity I'd put into a gender, somebody who's agender, completely without gender, and someone who is polygender, somebody with multiple gender identities, like multiple genders all in at one. The experience of many, many genders. I will not say all genders because an obvious one or well-known one is the Native American indigenous two-spirit gender. That is a gender construct or gender identity, which again, social construct is part of gender identity. That is a specific gender for Native American indigenous peoples. That is a closed culture gender. Unless you're actually part of an indigenous tribe or culture, you cannot claim that as a gender identity, which is why pangender kind of fell out of favor, because it's like there are some genders that are specific to indigenous people that you can't claim, and if you're saying you're all genders, you're kind of stealing their gender identity, even if it's kind of just by language as opposed to actuality. So that's another, but anyway, back to my original point. That's another duality, complete without gender and with multitude of genders. That's a duality, excuse me. They have kind of I'd imagine they have both an opposing and similar feel, because it's like there's so many genders in me, they kind of all mash into one type deal, and there's no genders in me, so you kind of see a similarity between them and also an opposition. So duality of nature, sun, moon, day, night, and then of course the transitions in between those. We have twilight versus, what is the name for twilight in the morning? I forget what it's called. I don't know. Gosh darn it, I keep smacking my mic. Alright, anyway. So that's kind of duality. Number 2 is also the gateway to our sensitivity. So like I was saying earlier, I kind of jumped ahead of myself, and this is where we go from a 1 to a 2, where we go from the physical, purely physical, to physical and emotional, which 2. 2 also. So in my book, it's the quote I get from it is, it represents the need to be our need to be part of a pair. So human need to be part of a pair, and I take some issue with that. And for one thing, I don't think you can limit it to a pair. Yes, we like having one other person that we just click with, we bond with, we've got the majority of our needs met in this one person, but that's a lot to ask of just 2 people. Especially because the only way you're going to find your perfect all-encompassing needs met partner is in your imagination. Now, granted, I'm sure there are people who have found that out there, but humans are herd animals, so we need more than just one other person. We need an entire herd. We haven't really evolved out of that. So if I were to reword this a little bit, 2 more represents our need to be more than one. To have connections, to have social connections, be it friends, family, lovers, QPRs, or queer platonic relations, or whatever, but our need to be more than one, because as has been discovered many times, isolation is one of the absolute worst punishments, tortures, you can put a human being through. It's very bad for our psyche. 2 is also the number of intuition, so this has to do with the fact that it's associated with the soul. It's the gateway to the soul plane. So in the numbers, we've got 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 2, 5, and 8. Yeah. 2, 5, and 8 are all the soul plane, quote. So that's the plane of the soul, basically, in the birth chart, in the numerological birth chart. So it's the plane of the heart, of the emotions, of the soul, the spirit. Not, well, a little bit the spirit, too. It kind of falls in that because there's only 3 as opposed to 4 in that. So anyway, so that 2 is where we start on actually accessing the soul stuff. To the blessing of intuition and sensitivity. So again, it has to do with our heart, our emotions, and our gut, to agree. Intuition is usually found, most people describe intuition as being a gut feeling, like something in their gut. So if 1 is about the body, like the root chakras or whatever from the bottom up, 2 is kind of the torso, and then 3 is the head. So 2 is the soul and the spirit, or the soul and the heart, I guess. Not sure. All right, so that's kind of number 2. It's all about duality, sensitivity, emotions, the soul, yada yada. All right, so the next section, the air feeling I get. This is very personal. The feeling of the element that I get from this card. From this card, basically. So swords, I associate them with air. Some people associate them with fire. It's kind of a 50-50. It depends on your tarot. It depends on your own framework. I'm pretty sure I've gone over this reasoning before. It might have been in my Tarot 101 videos I did. About how some people associate swords with fire because they're metal that are forged in flame. Fair enough. I associate them with air because they're sharp and cutting, like air is to me, as opposed to fire feels a lot more blunt. That's why I associate with wands. Not to mention, wands are wood, and therefore they fuel fire. They're not made from fire, they make fire. I'm just like, if it's something forged in fire, I can kind of see it, but it needs both fire and water. But you could also make that same argument for saying that swords could be associated with water, because they need fire to heat them to make them malleable, but to hold their form, they need water to cool them down. So if you've got both heat and cool, that's where you get air. So air just makes more sense for me as swords. I might not be putting all the thought into it that some people who associate them with fire have, but that's my reasoning. That's all there is to it. You do you. Whatever makes sense to you is what's correct, because tarot is all about symbology, and symbols are very personal. So the air, honestly, the elemental area of this that I do is the most personal to me section of this. The rest of it is like traditional meanings passed down type deal. Alright, so the air feeling I get from this, I've got my supernatural deck here. I think I've got it upside down. I'm not sure, actually. I forget which direction these go. Alright, so we've got here, it's just 2 swords, 2 angel blades, specifically from the show. Just crossed one over the other. It's basically a pip card. It's just 2 crossed blades. So the angel blades, they are the only weapons that will kill an angel. Well, I believe originally they were the only weapons that would kill an angel, but it's supernatural, and eventually other things began to be able to kill things, and yeah, never last for long. But they're kind of just short and simple. They don't even really have a hilt to stop the hand, so it's just like a long rod with a pointy blade that's longer than the handle, basically. So they're very short, sharp, to the point. No pun intended. Wow, that's funny. And that's kind of the feel I get with the elements of this deck for me, this card for me. And the 2 of swords, the air feeling is it's harsh, it's blowing, it only ever goes one direction. It's constantly pushing one direction. It's like it doesn't waver back and forth. It doesn't go different. It doesn't switch directions every 5 seconds. It's just one steady wind that's pushing. Now, it's not a nice, easy breeze. It's one of those Have you ever walked out in the when it's a very nice blustery day and the wind's just pushing? It's not like actually like bending stuff too much. It's not like bending the trees over. They're swaying in the wind. There's a bit of a push. And it's all just going one day. It's just a nice steady stream of air. It's got a little bit of a chill to it. It's like it's not going to be a warm wind because it's moving too fast, but it depends on the temperatures to how cold it gets. It might not necessarily have a bite to it, or it might, but either way, it's just a steady wind. That steady wind, like going about like, I don't know, 5-10 miles per hour, something like that. That steady wind, that's the feeling I get with the Two of Swords. It's like a steady, decisive wind. It's just like, we're going this direction. You can push against this wind, but it's going to be slightly easier to just go with it. That's kind of the feeling of air I get for this card. All right, so our next section is the Celestial Tarot. And as I've pointed out before, the Celestial Tarot is a bit more based on contemporary astrology as opposed to traditional tarot astrology or traditional astrological associations with tarot. That's a mouthful. All right, so the Celestial. So the twos in the Celestial deck are always associated with oppositions. What the hell? And here in this card, we see a wolf. Kind of the front half of a wolf that black wolf looks a little bit snarly. It's got the symbol of, is that Uranus? Yeah. The symbol of Uranus over its head, the symbol of Libra over its back, where it's faded off into black. Two swords down in the corner, just pointed straight downwards, parallel to each other. It's a fairly simple card. So the constellation associated with this card is Lupus, the wolf. So in this deck, in the Celestial deck, the Two of Swords is associated with the second decan of Libra, the second 10 degrees, so degrees 10 through 19. So the second decan of Libra, which in contemporary astrology is the Aquarius and the Aquarius decan of Libra. So in contemporary astrology, each of the decans of each sign is the same element. So it's all the air signs in one air sign type deal. So it's like the first decan is Libra and Libra, second is Aquarius and Libra, third is Gemini and Libra. So all the air signs in an air sign. So basically the ruling planet of which is an interesting it's interesting because so Aquarius is associated with the change maker, with the individual as part of the society. So Libra is all about compromise, about getting along with others, being able to work together, and Libra is about duality. A lot of duality in Libra in itself, and like, how's the pendulum swinging? What works best? How do we harmoniously get through that, make our way through this? Libra tends to swerve and swing a little bit, but they're also very mental. Yes, we are a little mental. They're very mentally focused, and so they use their head to get through stuff. But they also, because Venus is also the ruler of Libra, there's a bit more of a gentle water touch to Libra, just a little bit. I have heard from one astrology podcast I listened to, one astrologer who he puts Libra's ruler as the lunar nodes. I need to sit with that a little bit more often. I haven't thought about it in a lot, but that's something I should sit with. It's a very interesting concept. So Libra is the kind of, let's get along. We're trying to get along. Libra is when you first step into the higher expression of the signs. It's the second half of the zodiac. It's the beginning of the second half of the zodiac. So we've gone from the first half of the zodiac is all about the individual. Second half is when the individual enters society. So Libra is when you're first entering society and you're just trying to get along, make sure things are peaceful, not upset the status quo, like try to figure out where your place is, where everybody else's place is, who does what, all that, learning to get along. Aquarius is when we go, okay, we've seen the status quo, we don't fucking like it, let's change this up. Aquarius is extremely cerebral, extremely independent, but also extremely community focused. Not even global community focused, more accurately. Aquarius is all about is kind of your environmentalists type deal, or your social justice warriors, not in the derogatory sense. You're people who are actually like advocating for social change. Like, this is not working, this is wrong, let's change it up. Aquarius has this dual nature. Well, like, every air sign is very dual natured, actually. Gemini, the twins. Libra, the scales. Aquarius, the water bear. Aquarius is the only one that doesn't seem dual at first glance because it's a water bearer. Well, first off, Aquarius is an air sign, and it's named after water. That in itself is a bit of a oddity there, which tells you a little bit about Aquarius. Aquarians tend to be a little bit odd. Aquarius is the sign of a little bit of an oddity. It's the hippie who's like, no, we're out there, we're changing shit up. We ain't following this. They've dealt with Capricorn, they're done with that shit. So Uranus is also similar to that. Uranus is the first planet we discovered past Saturn. It's the first one that you have to have a telescope for, basically. You can't see it with the naked eye. So where Saturn had once been our boundaries, our structure maker, all of a sudden we see Uranus and we're like, wait a second, there's more to our solar system. Uranus came in and busted things wide open. Uranus, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this before, but Uranus was actually, I've heard at least one point from one place, I think it was a podcast, Uranus was originally considered to be the name originally considered for this planet was Prometheus. Prometheus was the Grecian Titan who sided with the Greek gods in the Titan Wars, and therefore was not punished like the other Titans or defeated. He was actually on the god side. But he was the god who was like, why are we keeping these humans in the cold and not giving them fire or helping them actually grow? And the gods are all like, fuck no, they're humans. They're lower than mud. We ain't bothered with that shit. Greeks have a lot of creation myths. And I recently heard something there's a possibility we said, why not all of them be real and multiple different times? But anyway, and Prometheus was like, fuck that, stole fire from the gods and took it down to the humans. And like kick-started. It's like, no, we're getting out of this status quo. We're getting out of this, you're constrained. Here's a tool to help you get started breaking free and growing and becoming more. You got punished for that, eventually got out of that, and so on and so forth. And there's a supernatural episode, but we don't ascribe to that because he's not allowed to be dead. Spoiler alert, by the way. Yeah, I know, it's a bit late. Alright, but anyway, but eventually they went with Uranus, probably because, Prometheus might have been a bit too on the nose, and Uranus, the sky god, was kind of, I don't even know. But anyway, so that's kind of where the energy of Uranus is it's the change maker, the one that goes, no, this box is bullshit, we're breaking it, we're busting out, we're busting it wide open. So, however, to think about that, Uranus not only is the ruler of Aquarius, however, the traditional ruler of Aquarius was Saturn. Think about that. The great limiter was also the ruler not only of Capricorn, the structure maker, the person with the clipboard that's like the list maker, the one that's like, okay, we need to do all these things, but also of fuck it, throw the clipboard out sign. One right after the other. Two different complete parallels. Aquarius has that parallel in it a bit. Aquarius is still rather structured. So if you think about the person, the advocate, that's like, okay, yeah, this, and this are wrong with where we are. We need to do this, and this to change this thing, and then we need to work through this. There's a list. They have plans. They have things to do. However, if they get too structured, that's their more shadow side. If they pull back a little bit too like Capricorn, that's more their shadow side. It's not good for them. They need to push forward into more of their Pisces, go with the flow side. So that's something I recently learned about zodiac signs, and which is a fascinating fact, and tells me I should be more like a Scorpio, which, god damn it, got too much Scorpio pulling in my chart. I don't like it. I can't say that I do. But anyway, so all that exposition to say we've got that dual nature of trying to get along with everybody, but also fuck this shit. Let's break out of this box. Ruling. We've got the fuck this shit, let's get out of this box. Ruling this section of the let's try to get along with everybody and figure out how things do or how things go. All wrapped up in this one card. In the Celestial Tarot deck, obviously. And I don't know how I feel about it. We'll get into the traditional astrology in a second. But the other big part with this is the constellation associated with it, which is Lupus, the wolf. So Lupus was originally just kind of considered to be a beast. It eventually became known as the wolf, but to be a wolf. But originally it comes from the Greek myth of Chiron. So the constellation itself used to be part of the constellation Centaurus, the centaur, who's associated with Chiron. The centaur, obviously. How many times can I say centaur or Centaurus in a sentence? But so there's two myths associated with Lupus. So first is that Lupus was the beast sacrificed by Chiron at the altar Ara, the other constellation, which I know we've gotten through 8 of Wands. That's where that one is. Which that's all there is on that myth. A beast that or at least that I could find, because there was only so much research I was doing. The beast sacrificed by Chiron at the altar. Okay, and anyway, the other myth associated with Lupus is that it may in fact be King Lycaon. Lycaon. I think it's Lycaon. Lycaon. The reason I'm using a hard C is because Lycan. Because King Lycaon. I'm going with Lycaon just because. Somebody can tell me if I'm wrong. Avaradia, who, this is a fun story. So Zeus one day decided, I'm going to go test some hospitality. Wander down to Earth in immortal disguise, and let's greet the king of Aradia, and just be a beggar person, and ask for some food. Now King Lycan is like, pretty sure this guy's Zeus. Let's find out, because I want to test him. Now I can't remember who he used. If it was just random servants or the children was a different one. He decided, I'm going to test this guy. I think he's Zeus. So either he's Zeus and he's going to seriously fuck himself over. Or he's not, and no harm, no foul. He cut up children. I believe it's usually children. And used their flesh to make soup. Or just a platter of meat. I don't remember exactly which. But he made food out of human flesh. Mixed it in with other meats. He mixed it in with other meats. And he served it to Zeus, who was like, the fuck, man. The fuck. So Zeus didn't eat it and fuck himself over, and he definitely noticed it because he was a god, not a mortal, and he was not happy. He turned King Lycaon into a wolf, and then threw him in the stars because fuck you, you're not allowed to. I don't know why he would have put him in the stars though, because usually that was reserved for great honor or grief, as opposed to this dude bad. That usually gets thrown into Tartarus. So it's the other myth, a possibility, or maybe it's because King Lycaon eventually became a wolf that Chiron sacrificed at the altar. I don't know. Be interesting to combine those two. Alright, but that's kind of the myth of Lupus, the wolf constellation. So, and the Celestial Deck guidebook says that it goes with the sacrificed beast, and it's like sometimes we have to sacrifice our instinctual nature and go with what we actually are thinking in our head. We go with our rational reaction as opposed to our instinctual reaction. Sometimes we need to sacrifice our instinctual for our rational to prevail. That's kind of their take on this, which, I mean, fair enough. We'll go with that one. Which, as to how that really coincides with Uranus in Libra, let's think on that. How was sacrificing our instinctual nature? So, if I think, well, actually, because Aquarius tends to be very instinctual, very gung-ho, like, go for it. Whereas, well, Libra can also be instinctual of, no, we need to create harmony. So these two opposing instinctual reactions could be said that, okay, these are two opposing instinctual reactions. We need to sacrifice this instinctual and really think about this. Which one is the better reaction? Should we say, fuck the status quo, or should we, like, rein in our fuck this to go with the flow? Which one actually works better? Use our rationality and our reasoning as opposed to our automatic reaction. Sound obvious? Sound good? Yeah. Okay. I don't know who I'm asking besides myself. Alright, makes sense to me. Alright, now, moving on to traditional tarot associations with astrology. Traditional astrological associations with tarot, in tarot. I'm going to figure out how to say this at some point or another very fast. Golden Dawn, basically, original stuff. The Two of Swords is associated with the moon in Libra. So we've got here my Tarot of the Mermaids deck. Excuse me. In which we've got a mermaid or merperson with very long hair sitting on a rock. They're outside of the ocean. Are they? No. Those are fish. Sitting in the water at the bottom of the ocean on a rock. They've got a blindfold on. They've got kind of cloth cloak just kind of billowing around them for aesthetic purposes. And they're holding two tridents, because in this deck the swords are tridents, even though they're still called swords because multiple languages. And the two tridents are kind of crossed in front of them in the traditional look, and but instead of looking forward like most prints, this merperson is looking aside, like she really doesn't want to see his trident. She's like, oh, no, I don't want to see that. Cross, sign of the cross, I don't see that. And she's even got the blindfold on to prove she can't see that shit. Alright, so the moon in Libra, now, like I said, traditional astrology associations. The moon in Libra, and it rules the first decan, because our aces are the elements themselves in traditional astrological associations of tarot, as opposed to celestial tarot, where the tens are the elements. In the traditional astrology of tarot, the aces are the elements. So the first decan of a sign is actually found in the, well, in this case, the twos. So the Two of Swords has to do with the moon in Libra. So the moon is our more instinctual, nurturing, emotional nature. It has to do with our emotion, bringing that back from the two. It's to do with our emotion, our heart, our soul, kind of our gut and instinct as well. So again, with that two, we're pulling this in from the two. All that, everything we brought from the two about emotions and the gut, intuition and heart, that's the moon. In Libra, a very cerebral, harmonious, get along with everybody sign. So, and the first decan, the first 10, so 0 to 9 degrees, is the first decan of any sign is all about the entrance into that sign, that beginning to learn this, the beginning to start to feel out what are the energies of the sign. Beginner mode type deal. Just starting to learn this shit, we're not really comfortable with this yet. We're still kind of like unsure and just learning ourselves. So, and I love the way the Tarot and Astrology book put this. The Two of Swords is the moon. So, the moon and the moon card. So, okay, let me back up. The major arcana moon card, the card of, we haven't got there yet in this series, but it's kind of the card of confusion and intuition and like not being able to see quite where you're going, just going by feel type deal. The moon in the guise of the High Priestess. The High Priestess we've done her before. She's very instinctual. She knows all the deep mysteries. She's like, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to show you, or I'm going to give you a nudge so you can figure out yourself. The High Priestess, the one who knows the deep mysteries. So the moon, our instinct and intuition, in guise as the High Priestess, the knower of mysteries, merged with justice. Stepping into Libra to merge with justice. Yeah, so basically our moon, the High Priestess, and justice all combined in one. It is the Two of Swords. So we see that a bit with, again, the blindfold. We've seen that in justice. I think, have we done justice yet? I think we have. I can't remember now. So justice has the blindfold. So we see that in the traditional drawing of the Two of Swords is the blindfold. And then there's the two swords at equal crossings of each other like a pair of scales. So we're weighing equal decisions, but here, as opposed to in justice where we're following more of our head, here we've brought the moon and the High Priestess in, so we need to follow our intuition, our gut. We know deep inside what the decision actually needs to be that we need to make. We just have to follow it and go with it. So that's our moon in Libra. It's how Tarot and Astrology is. This is focused on rational and balanced discernment, forced to rely on intuition to reach a decision. So, in order to meet this decision, this mer person is trying to figure out, she's got to use rational and balanced discernment, like actually take the facts as they are, lay them out, and then use your intuition to make a decision. It's like, I have all these facts before me. I can't use my head for this to make a decision because the pros and cons are equal in each side. So where is my gut telling me I should really go? Where do I need to feel out my path? And this card, the traditional Golden Dawn title for this card is the Lord of Peace Restored. So, let's see, the moon, our watery emotion, graces Libra, our detached air, with gifts of reflection, acceptance, and understanding. So basically it's like, I have a decision to make. I really don't want to make this decision. I have all these pros and cons all laid out. I have all the facts laid out. I need to follow my intuition. I need to just step my mind back, and follow my feeling, follow my gut to reach a decision. And then having reached that final decision, following my intuition, I feel at peace. I feel better because I've actually made a choice. That's the Two of Swords in this, explained through this. All right. Everybody with me so far? We're at 40 minutes. Doing good. All right. So our next section is our Kabbalah. So the Kabbalah associated with the Two of Swords is Chakma, or wisdom. And we have my Tarot of the Old Path here. We've got two knights all up in yellow, full armor plating, crossing swords with each other, literally crossing swords. They're right in each other's faces. They're holding each other back, pushing. They're both pushing at each other and holding the other back by trying to push forward. It's kind of a push of strength of like who's going to overcome the other. It's a tight battle, tight-fisted battle here. It's a very, very simple card, which is sometimes in the simplest depictions we find the most elaborate explanations, and vice versa. And sometimes it's just two sentences. Anyway, so Chakma, the Sephiroth Chakma, the translation is wisdom. Chakma is located in the Olam Atzilut, or the realm of emanation, which is the first realm at the very top of the Tree of Life, Kabbalistic Tree of Life, which is associated with the element of fire, or at least personally associated with the element of fire, based off of the recommendation from Isabel Radau Kliegman in her book, I forget the name of her book, Tarot and the Tree of Life. Thank you. I don't know who I'm thinking, but besides, well, probably my own brain. Throwing that up there. All right. So anyway, Olam Atzilut, the realm of emanation, the first realm of ideas. Chakma is wisdom. The wisdom is associated often with intuition, not with learned knowledge in the mind, but more again with that instinctual gut feeling, that intuition that it may not make sense logically, but I know this is right, or I know this is wrong. That deeper wisdom, that just kind of inner knowing. So Chakma is related to that. Chakma is also located in the Pillar of Mercy. So the Pillar of Mercy is the right-handed masculine pillar that overflows with abundance and love, the great benefics, luck, all the good stuff, all the good gooey sweet ice cream that just overflows in abundance and will make you sick after a while. Which is why we, of course, have the Pillar of Severity to balance it out, but we're not going over there right now. We're not going to the left right now. We're sticking with the right. So, Chakma is the full potential of creative energy. It's associated with the right brain, or with the right hemisphere of the brain, which in contemporary science, I think it's been slightly disproven, but the right hemisphere of the brain is still in popular science. That's the word I'm looking for. Popular science associated with creativity, art, music, intuition, illogical moving and stuff, what have you. So if you know right brain is associated with the left side of the body, which right hemisphere controls the left side of the body, and it's associated with the arts and music and feeling, intuition, gut, all that. So Chakma is all of that, create all of that creative energy and infinite expansion and expression. Like there's no end to it. It just keeps going and going and going. And there's no end to the reach, basically. It's also associated with the relationships, of course, because it's a two, so it's like a relation between me and the other. So the way I heard it explained in a Kabbalah book was Keter, the crown, is the one, the self, the identity. Two is when it sees its reflection. Three is when it realizes the difference between it and its reflection. But we're still stuck here on the reflection, so the one and the two. We're in the reflection, basically. So relationship, there being two, it's more than one, as I prefer, anyway. Um, do, 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 do. It is also is the ruler of the entire zodiac, not just one. None of the Sephirot are associated with any particular zodiac sign. They're actually all associated with planets. So Chakma is associated with the entire zodiac wheel, which is basically the stars. Keter is associated with the entire cosmos. So Chakma is the zodiac. Now, in swords in particular, Ardal Klegman, kind of some of the keywords I got this is the Two of Swords is all of this expansion and creative energy closed off. Shut down. All of these knights, they're too close together. There's no expansion and creativity. There's no back-to-back. They're in each other's faces. You could barely fit a piece of paper between these two. And it's not a good barely fit a piece of paper. It's a bad fit a piece of paper. It's the I'm going to kill you as opposed to I'm going to kiss you. Though I don't know. There might be some sexual tension there. That'd be fun. Anyway, fan brain. So it's the isolated, the closed, the blocking of the heart and turbulent waters. So we get a lot of that here. They're in armor. They are definitely blocking their hearts. They're swords. They're up in their defensive mode. They're full of armor. It's like, no, we're closed off right now. We're fighting. We ain't turbulent waters. We're fighting. There's no give here. There's no vulnerability. It's hard clashing decisions or whatever. It's not wanting to see, not wanting to keep the peace, or keeping the peace by refusing to make a choice, by refusing to actually talk it out type deal. It's like the Two of Swords is all about like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to make a choice, which is in itself making a choice, sorry to say. There's always, because there's never two choices, there's always at least three. This thing, that thing, and not wanting to choose either of them. Sorry. It's never this or that, it's this, that, or none. So yeah. So in the swords, Chakma is closed off, isolated. It's these swords, this mental, airy directness, shutting off this heart center, off this creativity, and going just no. No, 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 no. All right. Moving on with that, the Kabbalistic angel associated with the Two of Swords is Aniel, or God, Lord of all virtues, angel 37. And Aniel she is depicted as a well-dressed woman, trousers, the button-up shirt. Oh, I don't remember what we would call that. Probably 1700s men's clothing type deal. She's got very short wings, one sword in either hand. Both, they're all equal. She is completely equilateral except for her legs, because one's crossed over the other. So Aniel, the Lord of all virtues, is one of the powers. So if we go angels, archangels, she's level 6 out of 9. So the lowest of the middle tier, not the third, but the middle tier. So she's the lowest of the middle tier. And the powers, I do not remember exactly what their position is. I believe they oversee above the angels themselves. Or whatever. Her psalm is chapter 80, verse 20. And Aniel's area is she gives victory, rules over sciences and the arts. So both the sciences and the arts. So a dual nature here, which, as we can see, because often science and art are at odds with each other. A lot of people don't like to mix them. Though you can. I mean, hell, we're talking tarot here. So Aniel gives victory, rules over science and arts, and she also reveals the secrets of nature, inspires wise philosophers and their meditations. So very much an artsy fartsy intellectual. Those born under Aniel will acquire celebrity through their talents and enlightenment, and will distinguish themselves among the wise. So, pretty up there. She is the sole guardian of those born 12 to 12:20 p.m., the physical guardian of those born September 16th through 20th, and the moral guardian of those born February 7th, April 25th, July 6th, September 16th, and November 27th. So, that's coming up. All right, so we've got that oppositional rule over type deal. So, yeah, not much more to say on her, sadly. All right, moving on. So the being in the Fantasy World Tarot associated with the Two of Swords is the Ghost. Yes, I know it's a month late. Oh well. So we've got a traditional white sheet ghost here floating in a hallway of a dilapidated old mansion-looking building. So, you know, the usual old spooky story cartoon here, which is kind of cool. There's a couple of rats, broken windows. The candles are, of course, lit because they always are. It's got an old cartoon feel. I actually kind of like this card. It's got a nice feel to it. Which, I mean, as a Two of Swords, it's really not supposed to, but, you know. It's got a good feeling to it. All right, so this card in particular, there's two directions to go. The ghost is in the hall, kind of blocking the hallway and the staircase, and you could try to run through to either way, but it's like, you better make your decision fast before the ghost eats your face. So ghosts are the soul or spirit of a dead person or animal that appears to the living, and they're often like, they can go from anywhere between incorporeal, like wisps, to something you can only capture on a camera type deal. My sister's caught a ghost on camera before. That was kind of cool. Yeah, it was just a light little wisp, and yeah, we knew it was a ghost because there was nothing in that. It was outside, and there wasn't anything flying by when she took that picture. And it doesn't look like anything flying by. So it can be something you can't even see without a camera, to a kind of a misty, translucent figure, to a opaque, solid-looking figure that just kind of disappears when you're least expecting it, in a way it should not. So there are a lot of thoughts on what ghosts are in particular. A lot of people think echo. There's even different types of ghosts. But anyway, so ghosts are known to haunt either a particular object, a particular person, or a particular location. Spirit kind of comes from the Latin spiritus, which means breath, which is often interpreted to be basically the soul or spirit of a being. So like when, to go with Christian mythology, when God breathed life into Adam, or what's the other one? There's a few other, or in the Nordic creation mythology, when Odin breathed life into the being that, or Villian Ve had given limbs and blood to. That breath of life is what's thought to be the soul or the spirit of a human. It's like what actually animates us and makes us alive, is the soul. So soul, breath, spirit, and that's what's left behind when the body expires. Okay. So there's a few different thoughts about ghosts, and I'm one of the worst people to ask for this, because ghosts, I enjoy listening to ghost stories. Hell, I listen to a paranormal podcast that's been going for 16 years because it's interesting to me, and I enjoy hearing about it, but I don't do ancestor work. I don't work with ghosts. They don't interest me. I just have no care. I'm like, you dead. What do I give a fuck? Go play with somebody else. That's just me. Because I'm like, you're dead, you're passed on, that's somebody else's fucking job. Ain't none of my business. I don't give a shit. Fuck off, type deal. I ain't got time for that shit. But they do fascinate me from a theoretical standpoint. I prefer them more as a mental exercise as opposed to actually talking to them because, in my view, what we call ghosts are the remnants of people or animals left behind. I have a very odd description of the soul. So you'll often hear that 3-part model of the soul, which, come on, people, really? There's no higher, middle, lower, your base instinct. That's based off the shamanic view of the 3 layers of the world. Just bear with me. All right, so my model of the soul, of the human soul, and I've been wanting to explain this for ages, so yay, I have a platform. All right. My model of the soul is it is multi-layered. Now, as for how many layers there are, that's where it gets complicated. Because I don't have a direct answer for you. Because it depends on how many lives you've lived for me. I incorporate reincarnation into this. So first off, we have the very core base, what I call soul. The actual core of a person, of a being. That is their main part. That is their heart. That is their core. That is what constantly travels from life to life and new experiences. And every life adds another layer and it grows. Now, these layers, think of them like an onion, obviously, because ogres are like onions. They're all part of the soul. It's just the soul growing, but each of these different layers, sort of like the earth rock, sort of like the layers of rock in the earth. It's like you dig down, each of them tells a different tale. Each of these layers of rock, each of these layers of soul tells a different story from the time they existed. So as the soul goes through lives, it gains more and more layers. Now, whether it gets bigger or smaller or stays the same size, not important to me. It's like, in my view, it's like it's incorporeal spirit energy that it doesn't necessarily, it can change its size as it wants. The layers can be infinite and tiny or huge. Depends. Now, each of these lives creates another layer, which is part of the core of the soul. So each of these different lives adds a bit of a flavor to the soul as it's going through experiences and learning more and shedding certain things and adding different ones. Now, when this soul enters into a corporeal body to experience a life, or even maybe an incorporeal body, because, we got to throw aliens in here too. But either way, when it decides to enter a form of a life form, that soul creates a new layer, which becomes the spirit, which is a conglomeration of both the soul of that being and its current life and its current experiences. It's like, so me right now, as Ryan, this is my spirit. My spirit is this life, all my experiences of this life, this body. It's this body and all the different changes that it's gone through. It's this physical form, but also not. It's the spirit is this life. Now, that's all well and good. What happens when you die? Well, in my version of things, now, there's also the higher sense of self, which I think, in my view, it would kind of correspond to the soul. So I've kind of got more of a 2-part model of the soul, I guess, is where it's like the soul is your higher self and your actual being, and then the spirit is the life you're in currently. Now, when you die, my version of that is your spirit flakes. So your soul reabsorb. There's some of your spirit of this life left for, like, especially if you've got loved ones or if you've got a particular. That's what ghosts are for me. They're flakes of the spirit. They're like the outer shell, the outer crust of that spirit left behind, because it's like If somebody's really, really attached to something, somewhere, someone, or they're like unfinished, they're still floating around and they're attached to wherever they are. That's what becomes a ghost. Now, there can be little shards that flake off and become like past memories of something, because as we know, some ghosts or some spirits are just or just this little section of somebody's time, like a ghost that walks down the same hallway the same day, the same time every day, does the same thing. It's got no consciousness, nothing. It's just a point of memory. It's a soul shard. It's like that's what got stuck there for whatever reason, and it's doing the same thing over and over, but it's not an actual consciousness. It's just kind of a flake. It's just a shard. Now, the ghost that actually wanders around and has a bit of a consciousness to it, that's kind of a left behind pastry shell, basically. It's of the spirit. It's like, I got stuff to do. And that's what I see as a ghost left behind, as a consciousness. And the soul itself, in that point where I think the spirit is so damn attached to life that it's stuck there, I don't think the soul of the being is really there per se. I think it's kind of like distance a little bit, but it maybe not. It may have moved on, or it may have be kind of stuck in a spiritual limbo until that ghost finally fades away, like runs out of energy and fades away. Or the soul may go on and eventually they pull the spirit back, or it's just kind of left there. That's it. But it's more like, not 100% sure on that one. But the ghosts left behind for me aren't really full consciousnesses anymore, or if they are, they're just a small part of it. Like there might be a thicker crust or a thinner one, but they're really not there anymore. And the actual being has moved on to their next experience. Now, like I said, now that's that flake off. The spirit of that life gets absorbed in my image, in my view of the world, it gets reabsorbed back into the soul. It becomes part of the soul experience. The soul's already experienced all of that, but it kind of becomes the next layer on that soul before it moves on to the next life. Well, you might ask, what about the people what about like George Washington, where we do seances with him? That is this layer of spirit on that soul. I think there's a point, it's still there as kind of a separate layer as long as it's remembered throughout life. Like somebody who's like, we cannot even name because they've been long forgotten by their family, I really think there's very little attachment to it. Like if you found a random name in a ledger and could really try hard, you could probably call up the spirit of that person. It would be kind of like pulled out of that soul layer, like that soul has a stack of layers, and it's like, oh, we need to, this one, it's still attached to that soul, which is going through its own life experiences and whatnot. We're pulling that little bit of spirit away and saying, hi, we need to talk to you. And then that spirit, which is that life experience in particular, is talking to someone, which is why I think that even though like these famous people have probably been reincarnated who knows how many times by this point, you can still call up their spirit of that life because it still exists as part of that soul, and we're just kind of like pulling it out of the card catalog and going, hi, we need to talk. So that's a long explanation for how I believe the soul and spirit work in multiple different lives, and thank you for sitting through that if you did, because I've been wanting to explain this and it never comes up in conversation. And it's very irritating to me. Alright. But anyway, so ghosts in general, back to this tarot card, off of that tangent, is they're often... Usually when we run into ghosts, it's because they've got unfinished business. They're not over something. They're pissed off about something. They don't want to fucking move on because life is a bitch and they're having more fun as a ghost. They're often... Some of them can be nasty. You could have your vengeful ghosts, your pranksters that want to cause harm, or you can have your ones that are just like, I just don't wanna. I'm bored. I'm just enjoying. I liked this life a lot, and I just want to stick with it. Just fuck it. I'm just gonna sit here and do my own thing, like, constantly. I mean, fair enough. That's what you get with ghosts. But either way, it's kind of they're stuck there. So, like, if this card came up, I'd be like, you kind of feeling stuck. Like, you really just don't want to move on. You have the ability to, probably a lot of you probably already has, again, that soul/spirit for me, but you just don't want to. You're stuck. Alright, and that leads us 1 hour and 5 minutes later to our final section of this, the traditional meanings of this card, which I have my Vice Versa Tarot for finally again, which has a front and a back, or this side and that side to it. And we have here a lady sitting on a rock on this side, windswept with a storm around her. She's got two blades crossed in front of her, and she's kind of just like crossing her arms, like, not like in a defensive, like uptight, but in a kind of relaxed, like, fuck it, I'm just done position. But I've still got my guard up a little bit. One's red, one's blue. Differentiate two completely different paths, the cool path, the hot path, or whatever. It's stormy all around her. She's got a decision to make. She's blindfolded, windswept hair, all that. Now, that side of of this card is still that woman sitting on this rock, but the sea is calm. And there's a big-ass full moon in front of her. Like, it's clear sky, or mostly clear skies. You can see the moon. The clouds are parting, going away. It's no longer stormy. She's more at peace in this view. So, traditional upright meaning of this card is silent, aloneness. Time alone, time to think, time to, you've found yourself alone. It's like, it's more, the kitchen table tarot, Melissa Sinova, her book describes this as you've suddenly found yourself alone, basically. It's like after the Ace of Swords where things were just cut through, it's like you're now, something has happened and you're like, whoa, what the fuck just happened? And this is the time after that where you're alone, things are turbulent, and you're like, now you're stuck in your head trying to figure things out, and it's like, it's time alone, which can be kind of sudden and abrupt and scary, but it's also you're slowly starting to just like, okay, it's the acceptance after the shock of finding yourself alone, and you're like, okay, I'm alone here now, I guess I'm just stuck with all my thoughts. And here in this side, we see that it's very turbulent, like the thoughts in her head are running around in circles and just chasing after one another. It's stormy. It's like she can't fucking focus type deal. She's trying to, like, focus on her thoughts. Her thoughts are, like, are manifest around her. So even though this person, as she's got a blindfold on, she's trying to ignore the outside world so she can actually focus on her freaking thoughts, which are like a chaotic storm around her. Now, that side, that storm has found peace. She's finally settled her thoughts, found her course of action, and decided on something. She's feeling a lot more at peace. She's going to go forward from here. Now, the inverse or reverse or shadow side of this card is a chaotic mind. Just complete chaos. So if we want to take this chaotic, turbulent storm and just take that, and it's like she can't get her thoughts in a row. Reversed, it's like just no thoughts, head too full. Instead of no thoughts, head empty. It's no thoughts because my head is too full. It's just, it's a disaster in there type deal. Everything is imbalanced and upset, and you just can't freaking get a handle on anything. It's like all the hypercritical brain weasels are chasing around the depression weasels, which are chasing around the anxiety bees, which are chasing around the hypercritical butt weasels. We're calling them butt weasels now. Brain weasels, whatever. Chasing around the depression demons, which are chasing around the anxiety bees, which are chasing around the hyper. Yeah, it's a disaster in there. It's just everything is fucking too much, and it can even represent mental illness to a degree. It's like, okay, you need to stop and go talk to someone, like a therapist or a counselor, and like just get your head on straight. Like, just talk to somebody. Get some meds if you need it. Just something. And it's like your thoughts are going so far, or you're even just if it was to come up that side where it's calm and peaceful reverse, I'd be like, you're trying your damnedest to empty your head and just drown out all the thoughts you need to actually focus on. You're just like, nope, nothing. I refuse to look at anything. All this disaster in my head is just shoved in a corner, and I'm ignoring it and pretending it's not there. And just nope, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's good. So that's kind of the traditional meanings of this card. Now, we gotta take all these into account, obviously. It's like we've got the 2, which is duality, and it's a heart. With the fact that this is such a mental card, with such a cerebral air card, we also have to take into account the fact that there's a lot of water in this card. There's all these emotions all these emotions are affecting the head. We've seen that with the Celestial, which is 2 airs, but even that is like a bit of a focus on the instinctual, the emotional. The Moon in Libra, the Chakma, it's the restriction of this free flow. The Angel, that's like a duality of science and art, the rationality and the emotional, and just trying to figure out the 2. It's a lot of balance. The Ghost, trying to like just block yourself, refusing to move forward because everything's a disaster. We see that all in this card. So it's like you got to take all of these and bring them a bit together and like, okay, I know this is about emotion, I know it's about the mind, and I know it's about imbalance, chaos, or even getting at peace with yourself, of being able to make a decision to bring these 2 fighting parts into harmony with each other. So yeah, and that is the 2 of Swords. So I hope you all have enjoyed this. Again, I apologize for the 5th week of October that didn't happen, even though I said it would, because, yeah. October got busy and it still hasn't really stopped. And it's November, and I gotta change up a little bit how I do this anyway. Alright, so that is everything from me. So, like the video if you liked it, comment down below if you got questions or comments, or, well, I mean, obviously. Subscribe, because I like subscribers, because it makes me happy to know that people actually like these videos enough to want to continue watching them or listening to them on occasion. Like binge a few, binge one, and just ignore the rest for about 5 months, and then binge another one. Whatever floats your boat, whatever works for you. Man, I can't say much. Alright, so like, comment, subscribe. Send me an email if you want. It is still, oh, and you might have noticed, and I should have put this at the beginning, that I've changed the name of the channel to OwlFoxOmens. I'm changing my business name from Bags and Omens to OwlFoxOmens, because I really just don't make bags anymore. But the account email is still going to be bagsandomens@gmail.com, because if I can't actually change the email address without deleting the account, and I got 45 videos on here, or, well, a lot more than that. So that would be all of that gone. So it's still bagsandomens@gmail.com for right now, because I can't afford a business email, because, yeah, no. But it is now OwlFoxOmens. Spirit animals, I mean, it's like, they've been with me the longest, might as well honor them somewhat, and, like, it's mostly just divination for me these days. And this. So, yeah, it's OwlFoxOmens now here and on Facebook. And email still bagsandomens@gmail.com. Oh shoot, and it's still Bags and Omens on Patreon at the moment that I'm recording this. I should probably update that. Whoops. Alright, so that's it for me. Thank y'all for sticking through this, and I hope you all have a great rest of your whatever. And I will see you next week for a deep dive into the planet Mercury. So stay tuned for that. Alright, bye.